What's up everybody, it's Izzy, and in today's video I'm going to address a topic that is admittedly minutia in the grand scheme of things. However, I'm hoping that you might be able to pick up some keys on the bench press due to this topic. So what I'm going to talk about is bench shoes. And the main thing that I'm going to focus on is why you might want to wear a heel when you bench press. First of all, if you are a USPA competitor or you compete anywhere basically other than the IPF, this video doesn't really apply as much because in almost every other federation that I can think of, your feet do not have to be flat on the ground. So you can have your heels in the air and that's not illegal. However, in the IPF, that is illegal and you will not receive the start command to bench press. And this was something that happened at IPF Worlds where people didn't have their heels all the way on the floor and they just sat there holding the bar, wondering why they weren't receiving the start command. And well, it was because of the fact that their heels were off the ground. So the first reason, and probably the most important reason why you might want to wear a heel or at least a boxed heel or sole on your shoe rather than say like a wrestling shoe or the Sabo deadlifts, which is rounded around the edges and it's a cup on the edge rather than being like a flat surface, is that it looks like your heels are not all the way down when the shoe does not have a concrete flat sole. So the thing with a heel is that it is completely flat on the bottom of the shoe, on the underside of the shoe. So when your foot is on the ground, it doesn't look like part of it is kind of rotating up off of the ground. And this is an issue that can happen when you do have those shoes that don't have a completely flat sole in the back. So for example, Dave Ricks actually switched to his squat boots halfway through his bench session because he kept not getting the start command due to the fact that he was wearing, kind of like basketball shoes with that cupped heel, and it looked like his feet weren't down. Well, his feet weren't down. But with a heeled shoe, it's much easier to give the appearance of your heel being fully down, and it's much easier to have your heel be fully down. So this is definitely something that applies to every IPF lifter, no matter how you bench, because, again, you're not going to get the start command if your heel doesn't look like it's completely on the floor. Now, the second reason to potentially consider a heel has everything to do with your setup, and this is going to be segmented advice, meaning it's not going to apply to those of you who do not try to have an arch. This is advice pretty much strictly for those of you that try to have an arch and generally that try to have the biggest arch possible. While there's definitely something to be said for just the overall stability and solid feeling of like a quality heeled shoe for those of you who are kind of more flat back benchers, it's really not that important, and I can fully admit that you can wear a pair of basketball shoes and do just fine and probably notice no difference. However, for those of you that are trying to get the biggest arch possible, a heel, in particular a big heel, can allow you to get your feet further back. And the reason why this is important is that in order to have the biggest arch possible for your morphology and your given level of flexibility, you need to have your hips in full extension. And preferably, you want your hips to be in hyperextension when your legs are flat. So you can see in my setup that when my heels are off the floor and then I push into the rack, I'm in a position where my hips literally cannot extend any more than that, and only like the bottom part of my butt is on the bench. And this is what's going to allow me to be in the most bridged position possible. You can see that with the heel, when I fight my feet flat, I lose some of that extension, but it's not as much extension as I would lose in a completely flat shoe, because due to the heel, I'm actually able to get my feet further back, and with my feet further back, it mimics that bridged position more closely than if my feet were out further ahead. And again, there's other styles of arching. Some people actually do not try to put their hips in hyperextension when they arch, but for this style of arching that I'm doing, and for many of you out there, this will work really well. And you're going to be able to see from the side view once I push into the uprights that my hips are in they're fully extended, and that's what is maximizing my arch. So another little detail that I'll get into here that a lot of people don't know is that the maximum allowable heel height on a shoe in the IPF, so in the US APL as well by extension, is 5 centimeters, and that's just under 2 inches, but it's approximately 2 inches. And here's the thing, you are not going to find any kind of shoes that come with the 2-inch heel. Maybe bowling shoes would be the only exception there, but you're certainly not going to find Olympic lifting shoes with a 2-inch heel. Back in the old days, like in the late 2000s, so like 2008, 2007, the standard heel height, effective heel height for Olympic lifting shoes used to be 1.5 inches, which I think is, you know, roughly like 3.5 to 4 centimeters. But nowadays, the effective heel height is more like 3/4 of an inch, which is like 2 centimeters. And you will not be able to find shoes that are taller than, say, about a 1-inch effective heel height, which is, you know, 2.5 centimeters. So what you're going to have to do, or what you can do, if you're somebody who benches with this style, trying to get your feet as far back as possible, is you can have your Olympic lifting shoe, you can take it to a cobbler and have them extend the heel height to 2 centimeters, or which is roughly 2 inches. And that's what I've done. And you can see in the pair of shoes that I'm wearing here, the heel is at the maximum allowable height. And because I don't really have very good ankle mobility to begin with, this particular pair of shoes allows me to get my feet way further back than when I'm using flat shoes. And for me, while this doesn't make a huge difference, it's not the kind of thing where, like, you know, when I wear these shoes versus when I wear another pair of shoes, I'm going to bench 5 kilos more. I do think it cuts off about maybe 1/2 inch to 1 inch off of my range of motion. So when I'm maxing out, I do feel like it gives me another 2.5 kilos. Sometimes it feels like it gives me 5. But again, on a day-to-day basis, in order to get the benefit of this, you really have to be jamming yourself into the biggest arch possible and fighting to keep those heels as far back as possible. So the kind of person that this will help with is somebody who just wants to get their feet further back so that their hips are in that full hyperextended position, approximating like a bridge as close as possible so that, you know, your lower back is as high as possible, creating the biggest arch that you can. Anyway, I hope you guys got something out of that. It's an interesting topic. Again, a minor detail, but it's one of those little things that if you collect, you know, 10 little tricks like this, it can add up to a really big difference in how much you're able to lift. So anyways, guys, that's all I have to say on that one. As always, have a nice day and good luck with your training. Peace.